In episode 9, we're given a scenario where each circus member abstracts in Jax's mind. But it turns out that on top of every one of these scenarios having secret details you missed, they also reveal Jax's true feelings towards each of the circus members. We're started with Zooble, as a scenario showing their abstraction involved Jax essentially taking revenge on them. You see, this scenario started with Jax in a maid dress specifically, and while Jax sarcastically tells us that he chose this outfit to honor Zooble's spirit, we know that he actually made this choice to spite them. You see, back in episode 5, Zooble was the one who gave Gangle the idea to put Jax in a maid outfit originally in order to make fun of him, meaning Jax bringing back this outfit was a deliberate choice to turn Zooble's own joke against them during their funeral. But then we see Jax act out of character, getting close to Gangle to the point of even giving her his room key. We know he does this because with Zooble finally gone, he's finally able to push his teasing with Gangle and even openly show affection without anyone getting in his way. I actually don't think it's that Jax disliked Zooble. Zooble just had everything Jax wanted, including Gangle. He had no reason to hate them, she just wanted to be what Gangle wanted. Only our next abstraction scenario showed the exact opposite. Gangle's abstraction, which featured a Looney Tunes style version of Jax that was shown antagonizing the other characters in a much more exaggerated, extreme way than usual. While this change for Jax was said by many to be random, we know there's actually more to it than that. You see, this cartoony, antagonistic persona we see here is the only way Jax knows how to cope with Gangle's loss. While Jax is normally shown tormenting Gangle throughout past episodes, clearly using her as a sort of emotional punching bag, there's another deeper layer to their relationship. We know because in episode 6, he outright tells us that his perception of Gangle is being the sad one. Only after seeing Zooble start to change this and make Gangle happy for a change in episode 5, he shows a more jealous side to himself for some reason. He asks if Gangle is even capable of happiness in the first place, points out her flaws, and even continues on to say how hanging out with Zooble isn't going to fix these flaws. Jax genuinely gets jealous of Zooble for making Gangle happy because Jax, at her core, wants to make Gangle happy. She just expresses it in messed up ways. We know this because we've literally seen inside Jax's head and saw how she reacts to hurting people, which overall pointing to the fact that he would definitely care if Gangle abstracted. But in that case, why does he act in a sort of cartoony manner following her abstraction? Well, we're told how this whole section of the episode was meant to be a metaphor for a fractured personality Jax uses as a defense mechanism. So what we see following Gangle's abstraction is just Jax's primary coping mechanism, which is convincing herself nothing matters and likely predates the circus. But that's when we get to Ragatha's abstraction, this time featuring a much more unpredictable, animalistic version of Jax. You know, in this scenario, Jax is essentially broken, while once again, he resorts to his previously mentioned coping mechanism of pretending nothing matters, which he even uses as an excuse after attacking Pomni. This time, it's much more intense. While Ragatha and Jax were shown in multiple previous scenes getting into constant disagreements, never really seeing eye to eye, she's also been around him the longest outside of Kinger, meaning they shared experiences in the circus that none of the other characters were even around for yet. But how do we know that her abstraction in this previously mentioned scenario really broke Jax? Well, we know that this actually wasn't the first time we've seen this sort of reaction from Jax about something. Only when we saw it originally, it was because he was acting in a completely heartless, emotionally disconnected way. Back in episode 6, Jax's eyes changed to resemble the same sort of deranged look we saw in episode 9, right after Pomni asked him what he would do if she abstracted. He answers by saying he'd move on and probably forget about Pomni. Only based on her abstraction scenario we'll get into later on, we know that this was clearly a lie. He was putting on an act. Jax's eyes additionally changing during this act tells us that this eye change symbolized when Jax was putting on an act in the first place, which is where our previously mentioned Ragatha abstraction scene from episode 9 comes into play, as we know Jax was making the same exact sort of expression here. Once again, we know he's putting on an act only this time it's a lot more serious. But getting to Kinger's abstraction scenario, we know this outcome was a lot more complicated, as Kinger was one of the few characters to strangely not have a dedicated room, which left us with the question of why. And it turns out there were actually two specific reasons laid out for us here, with the first being the fact that Kinger and Jax were essentially never shown talking or interacting in any of the past episodes of the show. Kinger was the one Jax was the least close with compared with all of the other characters, telling us he likely wouldn't have any extreme view of Kinger one way or another. If anything, he seems to be the one character Jax doesn't typically mess around with, which led to the idea that Kinger wasn't given an abstraction room due to the fact that Jax wouldn't necessarily care if Kinger did abstract. But our second reason actually went along with what the show's creator Gooseworks told us. You see, a fan of the show specifically asked Gooseworks who the closest member of the circus was to going crazy, basically abstracting, outside of Kinger, to which we're told how this character is someone we wouldn't suspect. While it was later revealed how this character was actually Jax all along, we also know that Kinger was basically disregarded here because he's already been shown to be so insane that he's essentially immune to abstraction. He's the one circus member who's been around the longest, watching as his wife and nearly all of his past friends come and go while still remaining resilient enough to keep moving forward in the digital circus anyways. Which is the very reason why Jax wouldn't have needed to imagine a scenario where Kinger abstracts in the first place, because we know Kinger simply wouldn't be capable of abstracting. But that's when we get to the most important abstraction scenario of all, Pomni's. You see, while we never physically see this scenario in the show, we know that it's actually behind one of the two mystery doors that Pomni wasn't able to get open. We know one of these doors had to show us Pomni's abstraction, as on top of this first mystery door being in the same exact hallway as the other abstraction scenario doors, meaning it would have to be an abstraction scenario as well, Pomni would additionally be the only character left as an option for this final abstraction door in the first place. But if we're left with Pomni's abstraction being behind this final door, what would Jax's reaction be? Well, it turns out while we obviously can't see inside, the answer still ended up being partially revealed in an earlier scene in the show. Jax and Pomni's argument scene from episode 6 I previously mentioned that ended with Pomni asking Jax what he would do if she abstracted for real. We know Jax responds with a lie here, saying that he'd move on and forget about her, only regardless of his response, we know that during this moment, Jax was made to think about Pomni abstracting for the first time. He did this before Pomni made her way to his secret door in the first place, as we're told how I think it's not shown here because that scenario is so suppressed. It was so traumatic for Jax that in the situation where Pomni abstracted, he would end up not being able to handle it. A second way to see it, the door is heavily locked here because it's holding an abstracted Jax and an abstracted Pomni. If Pomni abstracted, Jax would feel so awful he would immediately be next. He wouldn't be able to stand it. But how do we know for sure that an abstracted Jax would be behind this door? Well, it turns out I'm able to put together the rest of the story here for you into this video right here. So for everything we know towards the 9th episode of the Digital Circus, make sure to check it out.